Are you in denial? If you are, then you're probably not going to admit it to me, but hopefully you know yourself well enough that you're aware of those times when you might be trying to avoid the truth because it's too painful, or you just don't want to hear it, but that can actually do harm to your mental health and well-being. So today I'm going to talk about what is denial, why denial happens, and how to stop living in denial. So let's talk about denial. Living in denial isn't great because it stops you from confronting the truth of a situation so that you can deal with it. When I had a breakdown in late 2011, I actually went into full denial mode for about 4 months. And it wasn't until I finally faced the truth and admitted to myself how bad my situation was that I could finally stop living in denial and get the help I needed. Sometimes we deny the truth or we can't face reality because it's too painful, but being in denial just holds you back from taking steps to heal. So before I talk about how to overcome denial, let's first talk about what is denial. Denial is a form of self-protection where we might consciously or unconsciously avoid the reality of a situation in order to avoid stress or anxiety. It's a refusal to acknowledge an unacceptable truth or emotion, or to admit it into your consciousness, often used as a defense mechanism. The vast majority of people who are in denial will eventually allow themselves to process the truth. However, there are some people who go beyond denial and into delusion. Sadly, most of those people seem to find their way into politics, which is unfortunate, but that's a whole other conversation. So let's talk about why denial happens. Basically, it happens because denial is about trying to protect yourself from reality, because the truth is just too painful to accept at the present moment. It might involve struggling to accept something overwhelming or stressful, and it often involves refusing to acknowledge facts about a situation or event because they are upsetting or confronting. For example, denial is a very common response when someone close to us falls seriously ill or if they die. It can also commonly involve other situations such as the end of a relationship, the negative consequences of our own actions, the reality that our job might be doing us harm or making us unhappy, or maybe that our business is failing, etc. Here's the thing, it's healthier to make choices based on a foundation of reality rather than denial and delusion. Just saying that the sky is yellow doesn't make it yellow. Just like twisting facts or using false or doctored evidence to support fake facts doesn't magically make them true. For example, if you have a substance use issue but you say you don't, that doesn't change the reality that you have an issue, does it? It's just about whether or not you're ready to admit that you have an issue. Before I quit drinking in 2018, I used to think my alcohol intake was fine, and I'd justify it to myself by saying that I only drank a couple of times a week, but those drinking sessions involved way more than just a few glasses and usually ended up with me passing out or making an absolute idiot of myself and then passing out. Denying your difficulties doesn't make them go away, and it can even potentially make them even worse. I understand that confronting the truth can be overwhelming, and I'll actually be talking about dealing with overwhelm in general in next week's episode, but the fact remains that the longer you delay dealing with the truth, the more harm you may potentially do to yourself and to the people you care about. So let's talk about how to stop living in denial. And I have 3 tips to get you started, then I'll tell you where you can find even more. First, be honest with yourself. Because even if you can't admit the truth to anyone else just yet, at least acknowledge it to yourself and begin the process of learning to accept it. Why? Because that's how you make progress. If your relationship isn't healthy, for example, denying that fact might prolong the issues rather than allowing you to acknowledge that something needs to change and then taking those first steps to make that happen. If you're dealing with an illness or a physical issue, pretending it isn't happening is going to increase the likelihood that whatever it is might get worse. If you're dealing with mental health issues, ignoring them or denying that you have a problem could lead to greater stress, anxiety, or depression, and that might make it harder to get your well-being back on track. If you're having issues at work, pretending everything is fine is not actually going to make everything fine. It's just going to sweep everything under the rug, and your problems will continue to pile up until eventually you won't be able to ignore them anymore, because they'll probably explode and things will be worse than if you just dealt with them now. The truth might hurt, but it's better in the long term to confront reality than run from it. because the truth will catch up with you eventually anyway. The truth doesn't stop being the truth just because you deny it or you don't believe in it. Next, let go of resistance. Because resistance really is futile, and what you resist persists. Just because you refuse to accept something, that doesn't change the reality of it. All that does is delay your inevitable path towards making your peace with things. And I'm a firm believer in making your peace with stuff, especially if it's out of your control. You'll also find it helpful to focus on what you do want out of life instead of what you don't, because that mindset can lead you towards acceptance, and it can help you to identify solutions rather than focusing on problems. And next, get support, because you don't have to go through tough times on your own, and nor should you. That might involve working with a therapist or joining a support group. Either way, you're going to find it much more helpful to have someone to talk to about everything that you're dealing with instead of just trying to figure it out on your own. You'll also find it helpful to let people in and explain what you're going through. So try communicating openly and honestly with trusted friends and family members about what you're going through and what support you might need as you work your way through everything. So, how are you going to overcome denial? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to know. And you'll find more practical tips for dealing with denial in a healthy way in episode 146 of my podcast, Let's Talk About Mental Health, which is linked in the episode description. And I mentioned acceptance before, which plays a huge role in helping you to make your peace with things, especially if they're out of your control. And in this video, I cover 6 ways to be more accepting for better mental health. Click here to watch it next, and subscribe to my channel for more weekly videos about looking after your mental health. Thanks so much for joining me today. Take care and talk to you next time.